So every time I find a deck that I really like and I don't know what sleeves to put on them, I always use these Dark Magician Girl sleeves, and I'm not really a big fan of Dark Magician Girl myself, but I really like these sleeves. It's probably because of the thighs, and after I do that, pretty much immediately I'll play one game with these sleeves and then I'll decide to myself, you know what, I don't actually like these sleeves, and this might be the fourth time that I actually end up having to do that. But in any case, we're going to be talking about Kairi today. Kairi herself was always okay, just because of the way that her playstyle and the way that she works just really meshes well with some of the other support, which is why once we've gotten the grade 4 Kairi here, Kairi is actually in a really good spot and is actually a really solid deck. So what exactly does grade 4 Kairi do? Well, what she does is she has two abilities. Her first ability is continuous on Vanguard Circle. All of your rewards placed this turn gets 5,000 power. It says place, it doesn't say place from hand specifically, on open rearguard circle, during battle, none of that. Whenever you place a rearguard, it gets an additional 5k power, which is pretty nuts. You can pretty much hit pseudo persona ride with a column just if you play both of those units that turn, because they'll get 10k collectively, right? Then her second skill is when this unit attacks, if your soul has a card with Kairi, so that would only be the grade 3 Kairi or the grade 4 Kairi herself, if you manage to get that into the soul as well, in his card name, choose up to 2 of your rearguards, return them to your hand, and then choose 2 cards from your hand and call them to rearguard circles. This is an amazing skill. It doesn't matter where you call them. The problem with the previous Kairi, the grade 3 Kairi, is that first of all, you had to persona ride to get access to play 2 cards from your hand. You also had to soul blast to bring cards back into your hand, and you can only call them in different rows. These are columns, these are rows, which means you can only really play something in the front row and one in the back row. So that means you can make a column, or you can make a attacker in the front and then put maybe a card in the back that can maybe call something else out or something like that to make another column, which was a bit unfortunate. But now we can just straight up, very simply, take 2 cards, play them back down. This might as well have said stand your front row, but it's even better than that because of her first skill that gives everything that you play 5k power. So as you can imagine, what you do with this deck is that you just go into your grade 4 Kairi, play down a bunch of cards, attack with them, then attack with Kairi, pick up those cards, put them back down, give them an extra 5k and any on-place abilities will activate, and then swing again for 5 attacks every single turn for practically 0 cost. The only thing you need is to make sure Kairi stays in your soul, which, as long as you don't play prison, is very, very easy. So let's just go over the red deck really quickly. I'm playing the Astesice starter just because I have the triple rail foil for this. I'll probably change it to the like cat girl with the thighs, just to match the sleeves. Then we've got the grade 1 Astesice Nanami here. She's actually pretty cool. When this is placed on Vanguard Circle, you can choose a grade 1 from your drop and call it to Rearguard Circle as rest. Could be grade 1 or less, but ideally what you want to do is discard a grade 1 and then bring it back. Discard for ride deck and then bring it back. Then you can go into your grade 2, who has an ability that says when this unit attacks, choose one of your rear guards and you can return it to your hand. So you can bring back the card that you discarded on your first turn and that you played in rust and bring it back to your hand. You could also then use that thing to attack, then attack with your Vanguard, bring that card back and still get it back. So it's a nice little value. This lets you get pretty aggressive in early games, which I think is really cool. And it also has 2 other uses. One is that when this is on rearguard circle, if this is boosted, it actually gets 5k, which is kind of nice. Lets you hit some very decent numbers. But also, if you call something out, you can return it back to your hand. It doesn't have to be something that you call out with the grade 1, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Then finally, we have the grade 3 Kairi, which we kind of already went over here, but when this unit attacks, you can Soul Blast 1 to choose up to 2 of your guards and return them to your hand. Then, at the end of the battle, this unit attack, if you Persona Robe this turn, you can choose 2 cards from your hand and call them to Rearguard Circle in different rows. Right, so that just means you can only call front row and back row, so one in the front, one in the back. In this version of the deck that we're running today, we actually don't give a damn about the normal Kairi, because we're always going to be going into the grade 4 Kairi. The only reason we'll actually use Kairi or any of her skills is actually for the first skill to be able to bounce something from hand if we need to do so, which isn't so bad, but we'll get into that in a second. So we're going to change things up quite a bit for this deck profile video today, as far as I usually do things. First off, we're going to start off with the grade 1 instead of going straight into the triggers. We're going to be playing 4 copies of the Conspicuous Anxiety Kabadea, I think is her name. I've just kind of been calling her Kabadea. So what this unit does, it's a grade 1 with 5k, but when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a Vanguard with Astesice, in its card name, this unit gets 10,000 power until the end of the turn. Now, I don't really understand how to say the suffix or the prefix for Kairi, so I just kind of say Kairi, or when I'm forced to say it, I just say Astesice. But in any case, this card is really amazing because it gives you a really strong booster or attacker. If you're on your grade 4 Kairi, for example, once you play this, its effect will activate and give it 10,000 power, which puts it at 15k, which is a pretty decent attacker and really good booster. But thanks to Kairi's grade 4 skill, this is actually going to be a 20k attacker or 20k booster, which is really good. Right now we're playing 4 copies of this. In general, this build right now is a little bit experimental. I have been playing with it quite a bit and I like it a lot, but there are a couple of things I do want to change, and I'm just kind of waiting for some cards to maybe go down in price, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. After that, we've got the grade 1 Earnest Stare Veta here. So this is one of the new mechanics in Lyrical Friendship. And what this does is basically if you have a unit with the ability Friend in a column and you have another unit in that same column, doesn't have to have Friend, both of those units become friends. And that can be used for any other effects. For example, this unit herself, if you have another friend in the same, not even in the same column, if you just have another friend, this unit gets 2k, which is nice. So this is just basically a 10k booster. You can also have this be a 10k attacker, and with Kairi it's a 15k attacker if you played it that turn, if you manage to have friends, which is nice. In general, this specific build is going to focus on the friendship engine that you can use. There are many ways to play Kairi. As I mentioned, she is pretty flexible, especially now at the grade 4, she's super flexible, right? So there are a couple of different builds. There's like using purely the stuff for Kairi, there's the friendship stuff you can splash in, there's also the ghost stuff that you can try and use, but we're going to be focusing on the friendship stuff. Next up, we're actually going to be playing 2 copies here of Head to the Pinnacle Caitlyn here. This card is really simple. When is this placed on rearguard circle, counterblast 1, discard 2, and draw 2. Very simple. Use this to filter out through your deck, look for your grade 4 Kairi, as well as get rid of some other stuff that you don't need, maybe filter out your deck, get some PGs, etc, etc. Very nice. And finally, the last grade 1 we're going to play aside from the PGs is going to be Next Step La Plume here. This card is specifically for Kairi. So when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a Kairi or Astesice in its card name, choose a grade 2 or less Astesice in it card with from your soul, and you can call it to an open rearguard circle. So it does have to be open. But if this is in main phase, you have to call that unit as rest, which is pretty useless to you. However, if you call this in battle, then you can place that unit in stand, which is really good. Which means that this lets you just set up a full column. So if for some reason with Kairi, you call or you bring in, like, let's say both your front rows and you don't want to call out one of those cards, again, you can just call out one of them, call this to the back, and then actually pull out an attacker from your soul. Likewise, if you maybe don't have stuff, you just call down one column, you can like play a column or just play a card and then play this on the other side to get a full column. It's very nice. I'm only playing 2 of these. I've seen sets play a lot more of these. I don't really see how that's possible, considering you don't really have any way to get these gals back into your soul unless you play multiple copies of them or something like that, of the you know, Astesice. But I think 2 is a really good number. So as I was talking about with the ride line, you can play the grade 1 and then discard any of the other grade 1s we just went through for your ride deck ride, and then just add it back to your hand, which is really good. So you get to proc effects such as the Caitlyn if you want. For example, after you ride and you get some counter blasts, you can go ahead and proc that to search out your deck. You can use this if you play another unit, get it some power. You can use this to actually have a 15k attacker. Granted, once you use it with this skill, it's not going to be able to do anything that turn, but it is nice to bring that back. However, the main use for the ride deck, because I did want to try out some couple of other options with the ride deck, maybe the like friendship ride line or something like that. The main thing is to use it with Sweet Sweet here. So this is sort of the main card that I've been using for this deck. I was running it at 4, but then I took it out for another card that we'll go over. I might actually end up running this at 4 again. But so Sweet Sweet here is an order, grade 2 order. You play this by counterblasting 1. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose 1 unit from among them, call them to your guard circle, and then shuffle your deck. So at worst, this lets you just call out something for counterblast 1, which is fine. It's from top 5, so you got some pretty good choices. However, what you can do with this is actually search out your grade 4 Kairi, which is really cool, because you can activate this and superior call whatever card it is that you're calling with this, and then using your grade 2 from the ride line, you can go ahead and bring back that Kairi to your hand, which is a really nice little combo. At worst, late game, you can also then just use this to fill up your board with something, which is really good. After that, we've got 2 copies here of the Hopping Star Melty, which is kind of like the chase card for this set, just because it's so generic and so good. This does have the friend keyword, so anything in the same column, it does become friends with it. And whenever this unit is placed on rearguard circle during the main phase, so you can't do this in battle, you can counterblast 1, choose 1 card from your hand, call it, as long as it's, you know, equal or less grade than your Vanguard, and if you call, you draw 1. So essentially, you draw 1 with this, which is really nice. Most people play this at like 4 in like every logo deck, which is why it's kind of hard to find these right now. This is like a $10 card at the moment. In general, I think I'm probably just going to play 1 more of these and maybe take out 1 of the comedy cards, but in general, this is a really solid card. And one of the things that makes the Melty a pretty solid card is that she combos pretty well here with the Larissa, Cheshire Smile Larissa here. So this is the key card for our friendship engine here. So Larissa, if you're in a column and you have another unit in the same column, they both become friends. Then when she attacks, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, this unit gets plus 2,000 power till the end of that battle for each of your other friends. So not counting herself, but anything in the same column as her is counted as a friend, and any of the other units that are in the same column with one of them having a friend ability counts as well. So if you just have 1 friend and then you have another pair of friends on the other rearguard column, then she actually gets a nice 6k boost, which is actually pretty sick, because combine this with Kairi's on place skill, you can have a 21k attacker, which is actually really good. So this is usually what you use in order to swing in, get some, nice little damage, because she hits for some pretty decent numbers. The grade 3s are pretty simple. Don't play a lot of them. We play Bashful, Striver, Kinky. Everyone kind of is forced to play this. From my understanding, this is just really good for the prison matchup. You can only put grade 2 or less units from your drop, but so yeah, this is a grade 3 where on place, on rearguard, you can choose a grade 2 or less units with Astesice in its card name from your drop, and you may put it into your soul. And if you did, you can counterblast 1 and this unit gets 10k until the end of the turn. So this can become a pretty nice attacker if you have the counterblast for it. I typically am playing the Sweet Sweet, so I usually save my counterblast for that or the Melting. But this is the card that I just added in recently to replace it with the Sweet Sweet, just because it is good for the prison matches. It also makes your La Plume a lot more active, since you can put back the grade 2 back into your soul and then use your plume to bring it back. And then finally, the last grade 3 we're going to play is just 1 copy of the grade 3 Kairi. Now you're probably thinking I'm playing this in case I break and I can fall back and use the Persona Ride skill. That is not the case at all. I literally just have that because I have 3 copies of the grade 4 Kairi and I don't have a 4th copy. So she's kind of the placeholder for right now. I managed to pull these just from the few boxes that I opened, which is really nice. But Kairi is like $10 right now, and I feel like she's gonna go down to maybe $5. If not, then we'll eventually get her 4th copy. But in any case, I don't actually know if I want to get a 4th copy, because I've been able to, you know, make pretty good use with the 3 copies and see it, and I don't need to like keep writing her or anything like that. 1 is good enough to have throughout the match, so I might just leave it at 3 since I am playing the sweets. But in any case, my trigger lineup is a little bit experimental. Right now I got 4 of the soul crits. You can play the normal crits. I just played the soul crits because I didn't feel like digging through my lyrical boxes, and I found these the 4 quickest. You don't really need the soul. If you have the 5k and you play it with Kairi's skill, it actually becomes a 10k. You can actually hit into grade 2s or anything like that, so that might be a little bit more useful for you. We're gonna play 4 of the new front trigger. Fronts are good because of the fact that you'll always have 2 rear guard columns ready to attack, or at least 2 rear guards in your front row ready to attack after your Kairi attacks, so you might as well play those fronts. It also is a nice 20k shield. And I actually play 3 copies of the new draw trigger. Reason being is that I do want to see my Kairi. I usually have enough filter that I can see it pretty reasonably, but it is nice to fall back on these. I will probably end up replacing this with like maybe normal crits or something like that. Play 4 heals here. Don't want to die, so heals are always nice. You know, if we have more or equal damage to our opponent and we check this, we can heal 1 damage, which is always pretty good. I can only play 4 of those. And finally, we're going to play 1 copy of the lyrical overtrigger. You could make the argument that the Cray Elemental overtrigger is actually pretty decent in this deck, because at the end of your drive check, or rather when you check this on your drive check, you will have 2 rear guards that you can make them both 100 million power. But the skill of the lyrical overtrigger is actually extremely good, because if you check this on your drive check for the rest of the battle, or sorry, for the rest of the fight, so the rest of that game, you yourself, the player, get the ability that during your turn all your rear guards get 10k power, which is just a crazy buff, especially if you persona ride in some of the other decks like or something like that. That is just way too good to pass up on, in my opinion. And of course, we play 4 copies of a PG. We use the newer PG just because we don't really want to discard. There's really no point in playing the 7k PG, because it does, even though it does give you a little bit extra power, I mean, you could hit into a, you know, grade 2 with this PG as well. So you don't really need to play the other one. And if you have 2 or less cards in hand, you don't have to discard with these, which is really nice. Want to try and do something a little bit different for this deck profile here. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a quick matchup analysis for Kairi using most of the popular decks in the overdress format right now as of set 4 plus the lyrical expansion. So matchup analysis is basically when you take a look at the competitors that are about to do a bout and sort of compare at face value who has a better shot of winning that bout. Now, this doesn't mean that automatically the one that is in favor is going to win, but it just gives you a sort of general idea of how the bout may go. Or more importantly, it sort of gives you an idea of what you need to look out for and what you need to adjust instead of just going with your default main game plan. We got 5 tiers here. It's pretty simple. 50-50 just means that it's even for either side. 45-55 would mean in this case that it is less favorable for Kairi by a little bit of a margin, whereas 35-65 means that it is more favorable for the other player than for Kairi. And obviously on the other end of the spectrum, 55-45 means that it's a little bit more favorable for Kairi, whereas 65-35 means that it should be really favorable for Kairi. So with that said, let's go ahead and scroll down here and take a look at our usual suspects. I basically picked most of the most popular decks that you see running around right now, so sorry Eugene, Chads, and Hexor Orbeez. You're not really going to see that on this list. I tend to like to give like a wide overview and include every single deck, right? Even if it's not as played, but for now we're gonna not do that. Right off the top, we're gonna grab Kairi and put her in 50-50. Obviously, if you play your own deck or against your own deck, chances are pretty even because you guys are playing the same thing and have access to the same tools for the most part, right? After that, we've got Nirvana here. I haven't actually faced off with Kairi against most of these decks, so this is just going to be, again, just face value comparisons here, right? Just to get a sort of general idea, but just knowing how the deck plays. You know, Mahar Nirvana, I don't think it's necessarily a horrible matchup, but I don't think it's necessarily a favorable one either. They're both grade 3 decks, which means you're not really potent until their grade 3 turn, but Kairi can actually get some early game pressure, right? While on the other hand, Mahar Nirvana can get in with huge columns as well. Kairi isn't exactly defensive, so I'm just going to put this one pretty even. Likewise for Babsagar, I think it's kind of even, but I actually think Kairi has a slight edge when it comes to this case. Reason being is that, you know, Babsagar is a really nice, good deck, but it's just a little bit too fair right now compared to everything that's going on. And I don't think it has the appropriate tools at the moment to handle with a lot of the multi-attack that's going on, especially for something like Kairi. So I'm going to put this right here. Barrel Magus is a really bad matchup for 2 reasons. One, it's the fact that it's a turn 3 deck, which means once you ride your Barrel Magus, the deck is pretty much live, since you can pretty much always get the 15 soul and the deck is already ready to go. Whereas like these 2 decks here have to wait until they get to grade 4 to really get anything going, right? So that's sort of the edge that Barrel has against most of these grade 4 decks, right? So it is pretty rough, but I think it's especially rough just because you lose a lot of your pieces and you kind of need some stuff on board, right, to actually get going. So having to constantly refill that is pretty rough. So we're going to actually put that in 35-65. You kind of have to figure out a way to play around that, not commit as much. Maybe counterblast starve them, don't let them be able to both use Pandemonium and Barrel skill in the same turn, stuff like that. Make sure you also snipe any Selfish Engravers so they can't countercharge, right? This is going to be grade 4 Bruce. I really don't know anything about grade 4 Bruce because no one freaking plays this. At least, that I know that I've faced off against. So I'm just going to put this somewhere here. I think that it is a grade 4 deck, right? So it doesn't have the advantage over Kairi because they both have to wait to grade 4. Bruce can still kind of do stuff anyways, but I think a grade 4 version of Bruce probably doesn't give Kairi too much trouble, but I could be wrong about that. Whereas here we have another version of Bruce, which is just normal Bruce or like OTK Bruce or anything like that. I'm gonna put this relatively around a cure. Its explosive power might give Kairi some trouble, as well as stuff like Derek and stuff retiring your board, but it is technically also a turn 4 deck, right? Because you have to reach Final Rush, so it might as well be writing into grade 4. So I think it's here, but it just has a lot more explosive power that Kairi I don't think can really deal with. Bastion Prime, I feel like given that Kairi can do pretty well early game even without grade 4, right, just on a base level, I feel like it gives her an edge over Bastion Prime. I might be wrong about that, but I feel like it has a slight edge over that just because really Bastion can't do anything until it's at least grade 3, right? There's no real way to like early rush unless they play down like PGs or triggers like that, because they mainly only run grade 3s in their entire deck, right? Gravidia is a pretty rough one here because, you got your meteors getting thrown at you, retiring your units and whatnot. So that one's a pretty rough one. Pretty much anything that can control the board is really rough, especially Pure Light, because grade 4 Kairi, if you're forced to Soul Blast and put into prison your Kairi, you're going to be in an extremely difficult position because then your grade 4 Kairi doesn't really do anything. So it's definitely a pretty rough match. Then up, we have the last 2 here for Stoicheia here. Flagberg, I feel like is in a bit of a tougher matchup. I don't think it's unplayable or rough. None of these are unplayable, but I don't think it's that bad of a matchup, but it is a turn 3 deck, right? So I think it is very difficult, but since it only really retires 2, it's not as bad, and you kind of get to work around that a little bit easier than something like Barrel that just gives you a board wipe, right? Especially considering Kairi can call stuff to hand, right? So you can kind of protect your pieces. I'm going to put this here for now. It's probably leaning more towards up here. And then finally, Magnolia Elder is an interesting one. I believe Elder is actually here. I feel like it has this sort of same issue with like Bastion Prime, where Kairi can get in some pressure even before going to grade 4, right? Whereas Magnolia is kind of just focused right now on going into Elder specifically and then being live before that. It doesn't really like to commit much or do too much, right? And then it has to kind of play catch up. But overall, they're pretty even because they kind of do the same thing. Magnolia gets an additional attack, really, and that's about it. Kairi maybe has bigger swings to compensate for that one less attack. So it can go either way. I don't think Magnolia has an edge specifically, but it's definitely one of these two. So let's just put it here for the sake of having these columns be pretty even. And here in the options corner, I usually have like 50 cards, but we're actually just going to go over 3 here today. One here is this grade 2 here that we just got in this lyrical set, Permeating Kindness Pauline here. She's basically like the grade 2 version of the grade 1, where on play she gets power, but a little bit different. This unit, when it's placed on Rigor Circle in battle, she gets 5k. So you can argue this might be slightly more useful if you want to give up a little bit more power, just because on your opponent's turn you'll actually have an intercept, right? And she hits about the same amount of power. On play she's 15, same as the grade 1. With Kairi she's 20k, same as the grade 1. The only thing is she can't boost, right? So if you would rather that, you can go ahead and use that. I know I play a lot of grade 1s, so this isn't such a bad option. The next up we have here is the Elegance Moments Lapel. This is actually Kairi specific support. So this is a grade 2. When a unit is placed on Guardian Circle, you can reveal a Kairi or a card with Kairi in its card name from your hand, and this unit actually gets 10k shield. So it becomes a 15k shield, which is actually really good. However, since I'm only playing 3 copies of the grade 4 Kairi, possibly ditching the grade 3 Kairi from the main deck, this isn't as useful for me. But if you play, for example, 4 copies of the grade 4, which I might end up having to do once I, brick and don't get into her, and then maybe an extra copy of the grade 3, just in case, this I think would definitely be pretty useful, especially if you don't run the Friendship Engine and you have a lot of space for this. And then the final card we have here is a card from set 1, the Brilliance and Elegance Aerith here. She's pretty cool. I was really excited when I remembered about this card, taking a look at the set list for building the Kairi deck, because I thought I could use this to get like 7 attacks every turn. What she does is when this unit attacks, if it's boosted, if your Vanguard is Kairi, specifically the grade 3 Kairi, count on best 1, choose 1 card from your hand and call it to open. There's a grade 3 with Friendship that can bounce back to hand, so I thought I could do something where like I could play that grade 3, attack, Soul Blast, bring it back to hand, have this, attack, call out the grade 3 again, have the grade 3 attack. That's 3 attacks already. Kairi can come in, bring cards back to hand, call stuff out. Maybe this could be on this side where you didn't use a booster, swing in with that, this can bounce back to hand, etc, etc, which would have been great. So theoretically you can still do that if you play the original Kairi for some reason and don't use the grade 4, or if you do a version where you're light on the grade 4 or something like that, or you use both, that is an option that you can do. But unfortunately that is out of the realm of possibility for the deck I have. So let's just go ahead and run through this real quickly, see what it would be like. We're going to draw here 5 cards. So if our starting hand looks like something like this, we're actually in a really good spot. It's pretty rare for me to actually be happy about seeing PGs in my opening hand, just because I play so much barrel and I kind of have to hard mulligan for everything. But ideally all you really need is your Kairi, and ideally some other grade 1 that you can discard in order to make use of your ride deck, and that's really all you need, which is really nice, which makes this deck pretty flexible, that it's not really piece reliant. So we can just go ahead and stand up our Vanguard here. Our hand is just about the same as what we mulliganed with, so we can just go ahead and discard our PG. Ideally it's probably best to discard something like the La Plume maybe, so that way your opponent doesn't know you already have a PG in hand. But we can go ahead and grind the grade 1, go ahead and bring that back. Let's just say we went first for the sake of argument. Our opponent can go ahead, give us 1 damage, take a front, doesn't matter, it's first battle. We'll draw a card here. We can go ahead and in this case, it's really up to you what you think you'll need best depending on the matchup. I'll in this case discard the heal trigger and then ride the grade 3 here, or sorry, grade 2. Unfortunately, I can't really do too much with this PG. Had I played the La Plume, I would have been in a better position because I can actually go ahead and attack with that. Then go ahead and attack with Kairi, bring this back to my hand, and then check and get another card in hand, which is really nice. Then let's just say opponent fights back here, gives us 2 damage. We're going to take that because we're Pog champs, and then start our turn here, stand and draw. Don't know why it is that I keep getting my PGs, but hey, who am I to complain, am I right? So here we could discard the PG, but I don't think that'll be a good idea. I'll probably would discard the... maybe not. Yeah, let's discard the little plume, just so we can ride the Kairi here. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything like a sweet, which has been unfortunate. We can go ahead and call out the Melty here. We're going to go ahead and counterblast 1, call out the Larissa here, and we're going to head and draw 1. It's going to be another Larissa, unfortunately. So Larissa here, her skill only activates when your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater. In this situation, we're pretending that we went first, but I can do something here where I can actually call this Larissa here, which doesn't do anything. It puts them in friends, but I can go ahead and swing in twice with these guys, and then swing in here, and I can go ahead and Soul Blast the grade 0. That doesn't really do anything for us, and bring back both Larissas to our hand, so we can use them next turn, while the Melty probably gets her ass eaten this coming turn, right? I should check. Didn't get anything. And let's say we can go ahead and use up all these PGs we got. Go ahead and guard and keep the Laplume, but discard the extra Larissa. And go ahead and maybe take one of these. Let's go ahead and just go ahead and stand. Now we can actually go ahead and play our grade 3 Kairi, and this here is when the magic begins, because I can go ahead and, for example, call out Larissa here, who's going to get nice fat 5k from Kairi's skill. I can use my Sweet here to counterblast 1. Look at the top 5 cards of our deck here, and I think, judging from my hand, I'll probably call out the Yvette. I'm going and shuffle that there. We can actually call this here, which is really nice, and we can actually call the Kairi girl over here. So that actually gives us some friends, which is really nice. I can actually call out the Laplume if I wanted to make a column here. But we can go ahead and swing in here. This is actually going to make this 17. I can swing in here for 20, which is really nice, and we can go ahead and swing in with Kairi. We can call these back to our hand and call these out here yet again. Or what you could do is actually call this back into your hand, call out the Laplume here, and you can actually go ahead and call out the grade 2 Kairi over here, which actually powers up your Larissa, because now you're having another friends, right? And since you got triple drive, you can check here, get a critical, which is really nice. Didn't get a front, which would have been nice as well, considering. And you can give, let's say, power and crit to Larissa, assuming they PG'd this attack here. And you can have your Kiora here attack boosted by the Yvette, who's a 10k. Since you're getting boosted, Kiora actually gets another 5k. So this is actually going to be a nice 25k column, plus the fact that you played a card this turn. So these cards actually get an additional 10k, which is really nice. So that's actually a nice fat 35k column, which is pretty nice. Then Larissa can go ahead and swing in with your Laplume here, and Larissa is going to be pretty huge as well. It's gonna be altogether 34 here, which is, you know, pretty solid numbers. And that's basically all you're gonna be doing throughout the game, is just constantly cycling out effects like that. And that just about does it for this video. Let's get rid of this ugly, boring, normal Kairi and put on the good, useful grade 4 Kairi. There's many ways to play this deck. I feel like the Friendship Engine might be the strongest one, but I could always be wrong as per usual. Let me know what you guys think of my list in the comments down below. As I mentioned somewhere earlier on, it is a bit experimental, it's not super final, but I just wanted to talk about this deck because I've been having a lot of fun with it and I think it has a lot of potential. In any case, take care of yourself.